like to call to order the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission meeting
This conference will now be recorded.
How rude. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Wichita Area Planning, or the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission for Thursday, September 24th. First item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. We've got minutes for August 20th meeting, and according to what is on the minutes, it appears as though everybody was here, so.
Move for approval.
Second. Got a motion by Mr. Joe Johnson, second by Mr. Hartman to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed?
Disclosure?
Hum?
Don't you have to run the disclosure?
Oh, well, okay. You insist. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries on the minutes. So if we could have the public comments or the public notification, please.
That was both minutes, right?
Just for the one.
Just did the first one.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those at Century 2, copies of the agenda staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room or the GoToMeeting comments box. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Okay, yes, Mr. Yura.
The vote on the minutes, was that for both sets of minutes?
No, it's just for the.
Okay, and who made them? I missed that.
Okay, Mr. Joe Johnson made the motion, Hartman on the second, and the motion carried 10-0.
Well, we have 11 here. There's 9 here.
You gotta count the ones online.
We have one online.
Florence is on the
Torrance is online.
remote.
Okay,
And Josh is now online. Okay.
okay, Josh is online too. Let's see, okay.
So we have 12 now.
Okay. All right, we'll take up the minutes for the September 10th meeting. According to the minutes, it shows that Hartman and Blick were absent, so.
Move for approval.
Second.
I move to approve.
Too late.
Perfect. It was moved by Mr. McKay, second by Mr. Dool to approve as printed.
Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any discussion? Mr. Foster.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. On page 11, there's a reference relative to revised site plan as ACHED. What does that mean?
Should be see attached.
Oh, see attached, okay. Then on page 29, in the middle of the page, Foster, the intent was to say, where's the closest TF3 zone to this property, as opposed to 2U3? That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any other? Right, and Blake will be abstaining, so. Okay, been moved and seconded, with the noted changes. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those opposed, nay. Abstaining would be Blick and Hartman.
And
Okay, we'll move on to the subdivision committee recommendations. Start off with item 2.1, the sub 2020-00028, final plat of Sunrise Terrace Addition. Is there anybody on the commission that wants to hear this item? Seeing none. Anybody in Century 2 that would like to hear this item? I'll take that as a no. I can't hear what Century 2 is saying. Anybody online that wants to hear this meeting, item? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2.2, subdivision number 2020-00038, one-step final plat for David McCormick Addition. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this item? Seeing none, anybody at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
There's no one at Century 2.
Thank you. Anybody virtually that would like to hear this item? Seeing none, we'll take that item number sub 2020-0039, one-step final plat for South Glen 4th Edition. Anybody on the commission would like to hear this item?
Mr. Chairman, I had a staff question on that item.
Okay. Anybody at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
There's no one here.
Okay. Anybody online through other means virtually would like to hear this item? Hearing none. We'll go to the next item, sub 2020-00040, one-step final plat for M&K Industrial Edition. Anybody on the commission that would like to hear this item? Seeing none, anybody at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No.
Anybody virtually that would like to hear this
Is there
item?
anybody there?
No one at Century 2.
Seeing nobody's interested in this item, we'll take that one.
Chairman, make a motion to approve 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4.
Before, I'll take that motion, Mr. Blick, in just a second. Mr. Foster had a question on item 2.3.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine, you're fine.
Apologies.
Mr. Foster?
Just a simple question. Item 4.1 is a zone change relative to that plat. Is it standard, or should there be a staff comment that the approval of the plat is subject to the zone change, or how does that work?
In this case, the zone change will not impact the plat. There is some occasions where we need to have a zone change to get the proper lot sizes and so forth. But in this case, the zone change has no impact on the plat, which is why we did not tie them together.
maybe it's a question for the agent or applicant, would you want to approve the plat if you don't get the zoning?
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I apologize. I do have an issue with that, and I would like to hear this particular one.
you want to hear 2.3?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so Mr. Blick, I'll take your motion now.
Motion to approve 2.1, 2.2, and 2.4.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Blick to approve items 2.1, 2.2, 2.4, second by Ms. Miles. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll go to the public hearing items. Vacation 2020-00032, city vacation of a portion of a platted alley right-of-way between South Main and South Market, and also between East Lewis and East Dewey. Anybody on the commission that would like to hear this item? Seeing none. Anybody at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one at Century 2.
Anybody virtually that would like to hear this item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval for item 3.1.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Hartman, second by sorry, Mr. Warren, to approve this item. Any discussion on the item? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the public hearing, item 2020-00031, city rezoning of 13.86 acres from SF5 to general commercial, located approximately a quarter of a mile, or half a mile south of 47th Street and Broadway Avenue. Anybody that would like to hear this item? Nobody here on the commission? Anybody in Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one in Century 2.
Anybody virtually that would like to hear this item, zoning case 2020-00031? Hearing none,
Move for approval.
Second.
Mr. Joe Johnson made the motion to approve this item. And Mr. Bill Johnson seconded it. So Johnson and Johnson made the motion. So anybody have any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion
I
carries.
have one extension.
I'm sorry.
Tell those other, I will abstain until,
So motion carries unanimously, 11-0 with one abstention. The non-public hearing items 5.1 and 5.2 we will hear. So we'll go back to our subdivision committee recommendations, item 2.3.
Neil Straw, planning staff. Item 2-3 is the South Glen 4th edition. This was reviewed at the subdivision committee last week. It's located on the east side of South Broadway, half mile south of 47th Street South. It encompasses one lot. The current zoning is SF5. They are proposed, actually, the other zone change that was on the hearing today was to GC, general commercial. Per item A, Public Works required the applicant extend water and sewer to serve the site. Were some issues with utilities that will be worked out with Public Works prior to the plat going to City Council. As I notified the Planning Commission this morning, item E has been updated as that drainage plan has been approved by City Stormwater. Next slide, please. And the next one. The plat did not denote access controls along Broadway per item F. However, I did receive a revised plat earlier today that did show those access controls, so item F has been addressed. I also should address the second sentence in item F. We did require complete access control along Custody. Next slide, please. That is the street along the south, since that street is not paved. And the site plan on the next slide, I believe, does not show any access off of Custody, so City Public Works would like to see complete access control until Custody is paved. Any questions for staff?
Questions for staff? Mr. Foster, did you have a question?
I think the question still stands. Should we include a comment? Maybe we need to talk with the agent
Okay.
on that.
Mr. Florence, did you have a question? You're muted. You're muted.
Okay. So we're talking about having 222 possible units in here, and you have one way in and one way out. I'd like to see what the fire department says about that. And, I just have a fundamental problem with having potentially all those units in there and one way in and one way out. So, and I just have a problem with that.
Was that discussed at the subdivision meeting?
City Fire was asked, it was asked if City Fire had any comments, and they had no comments, so my understanding is they're okay with the one-way in. And again, the site plan really is not required with the plat. We showed that with the plat since we had it available, but the plat review really does not address the density of the site. It's one lot, so.
Okay. All right.
See, and that's the first time I've heard that question was asked to the fire department, because it was kind of skated over when we discussed this at the subdivision meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Perhaps one way to address that would be to require an access on the Custody, which should be approved by the fire folks whenever that does get paved. That's not an immediate solution, but it might be a long-term benefit.
You were going to say something?
Yeah, the access along Custody will be allowed once the street is paved. So that would be available to fire.
Yeah, okay.
I'm saying just include it as a requirement.
That there be once the street is paved, then have that?
Because it needs to be planned that way.
Yeah. Is that?
Well, and I would add that the site plan that you see is a requirement to get all the approvals once the property is zoned for the development of the RV park. But the whole layout and everything, approvals, everything are done administratively under the standards of the RV code, which is a separate document from zoning. It's not tied to zoning. It's not tied to plat. The plat is for the one lot. That's all that's going on. You're getting a courtesy show of how they intend to lay out the RV park on the property. Not only are we showing this slide as with the plat, but we also have it as a slide in the zoning case that you've already voted on. But the The city code with respect to how that RV park is developed is all controlled under a separate body of law.
Okay, Mr. Hartman?
So Dave, on the plat, will they state that, there'll be access once it's paved?
Well,
Or
we
will it-
can.
or it
I
won't be
mean,
listed as-
If the access control is only applicable so long as Cussy is unpaved, then the access control would automatically disappear once the paving occurs.
Right. But you, so you wouldn't label it complete access control on the plat?
We've never, to my knowledge, ever mandated someone make a connection to a public street anywhere. We've done all kinds of restrictions of you can't put an access.
Yeah, you can't do that.
But we've never had one that says, oh, you have to connect here, so.
This is a local street, it's not an arterial, which requires access controls. So normally Custody will not have any access controls to begin with, since it's a local street. We only put them on there since it is unpaved.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Foster?
I'd be curious if fire had a chance to see this site plan, because when you look at it, I can see Mr. Florence's concern. Are there proper turning radii that's even gonna allow for fire to get through there?
It was submitted with the plat, and fire did receive the plat and the site plan. Again, no comments were received from fire.
Is this something that MABCD would pick up or look? See, now, and tell me if I'm wrong, Neil, but I recall one of the fire chiefs telling us that once this goes through, they don't see it again. Once the zone change happens, that it doesn't come back across for them to look at. Now, I might be wrong on that, but there
In this
seemed to be a
instance,
gap in
I
there.
think they will see it because they will have to submit plans that will get approved and reviewed all internally to get the license to run the RV park. So fire will see it then. But that will be MABCD, not us.
Mr. Bill Johnson?
I guess I just want to say the units that be pulled in here or drove in here are probably larger than most fire equipment. So I would think you would design one to accept them units because that's what you're renting to. And I think the fire department have plenty of access to get around.
Mr. Warren, did you have a comment?
A staff question, I guess, if we want to make sure that there is, at a point where the street is put in, that there will be a second access, how do we do that?
There's nothing we need to do, since the plat says the complete access control is only while the street is unpaved. That gets lifted, as Dave said, that gets lifted once the street is paved. So once the street is paved, any access is
Then they have to
allowed.
put in a second access.
They'd be permitted by
Well, it's
default.
permitted, but it's not required. If we want to require it.
I think the fire department would require it when they review it.
I mean, I think that's the feeling I'm getting from the commission is we want to make sure that there's a second access in case there's a problem. If we want to make sure that happens at some point in the future, how do we do that?
Then I would recommend that you pull back the approval on the rezoning and amend that approval to, I cannot tell you off the top of my head whether the design requirements within the city code concerning RV parks mandates two means of access. The Air Capital Park coming off 47th Street only has one means of access in and out. And so if you're wanting that, then I would suggest perhaps amending and putting a PO on that zoning that would dictate that the RV park have a second means of access to Custody at what time, at such time as Custody is improved.
Thank you.
Mr. McKay?
Well, I would think as a developer, I'd want to know where that access control is going to be in my development process. And so, I would think that he would want to designate where that access is going to be, just for design purposes more than anything else.
That was my point.
Well, it sounds like we're not setting a precedence here by not having more than one access point going in there. If we have mobile home parks or RV parks around the city that have one point of ingress and egress. Mr. Dool?
So, if I understand this correctly, there's no immediate plans to pave that street. But if the applicant doesn't put a second access somewhere, this thing will not move forward the way it's being proposed. Is that correct?
No.
I don't believe that's correct, no.
Bill Johnson?
I'm gonna try a motion, I think.
Well, we have, does the agent or applicant have an opportunity to
Sure.
speak at this? So I see that the agent is in the house, at least in his house maybe.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman, you also
I'm
have a
always
question.
available. I'm the
Mr.
agent
Black.
for the applicant.
You also have a
Mr.
question.
We have a commissioner with his hands up.
Yes,
They're
I would-
trying to have-
Yeah. Blick, Mr. Blick?
This actually might, because it kind of got asked here in a second ago, but this might be a question for the applicant because based off the photo and the property that's north, the Air Capital, it's an all paved RV park. And so by the photo, I couldn't tell if it was actually paved or not. And I was going to ask staff, but it probably is a applicant question. That might kind of answer some questions on turnaround of vehicles and all that.
Okay. Well,
Yes, all of the driving surfaces will be paved.
so
The plan is to develop about the north half of this first as a phase one.
His name and address.
And then later, as that becomes successful or appears to be successful, then they'd move into phase two, which would be the south half. And
just hang on.
Putting an access drive would only eliminate maybe two of those back-end sites along the south line down there. So I don't think it would be any problem to create a second point of access, especially as phase two is going to be down the road anyway.
Okay. Can we have your address, please, Mark, for the record?
My address is 433 South Hydraulic, Wichita, Kansas. Mark Savoy, Savoy Company Land Surveyors.
Thank you, Mark. Do you have any questions of the agent? I think Mr. Blick had one.
I got one.
And, okay. Mr. Blick, do you have questions for the agent?
No, actually, he answered my question.
He did, okay. Mr. McKay?
Mark, would you oppose a contingent dedication marked on your plat? It says 1X when it's paved. You said it's only gonna take one or two. That could be varied, but at least it's showing the plat that there's a contingent dedication. Pardon me?
We could designate a location for it.
So you do a contingent dedication that could be slid one way or the other a little bit, but at least you got it on the map that there's a contingent dedication.
You betcha.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions of the agent? Seeing none. Is there anybody virtually that would like to make some comments on this? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for action. Sounded like, okay, I've got a question. If he puts a contingent dedication on that south property line for one drive when the street is paved, is that?
I'm thinking out loud here, and Neil's worked this a lot longer than I have, but I'm thinking we're showing along custody now, standard language that says complete access control. I would presume that is indicating that is true until such time as custody is improved. If we then added a statement or a sentence that basically said one access on custody permitted when improved,
Required.
they don't have to designate it, and all the plat's just saying they'll have an access. And then they can choose where that is at the time they get ready to make the improvements.
John's got a question.
Yes, that would work.
That would work? Okay. Yes, Mr. Johnson, Joe?
No, okay.
Were we gonna say it was required?
Or that was my only thing, required.
If you want to state on the plat that a one required access along Custody or one access is required once it is improved, I would think that would carry. I'd look to law.
Laws.
And we got a nod.
Law's nodding, and he's awake, so.
Well, the only reason I say contingent dedication, because being a mobile home park, they can slide it up and down one way or the other, fairly easy. And that way it shows on the face of the plat that there is a contingent dedication for the future. How you mark it in there, once Custer's paved or whatever it might be, is immaterial to me, but the fact that on the face of the plat, it shows that there's going to be a contingent, there's a dedication to Custer.
Would be a dedication, in terms of, it's just an access point.
Yes.
An access point, okay. Agent, you're good with that?
He already said he was.
Yes.
Okay.
I can agree to that.
All right. Mr. Florence, does that resolve your concerns with this?
Yeah, that would, but I would still like to hear what the fire department had to say.
Okay, well, okay. Well, it sounds like fire is gonna will have their input again, according to Mr. Yearout.
I would believe they will be reviewing the design and layout of the proposed park at such time that the final plan is submitted in order to get the licenses necessary to build the thing.
All right. Have we got this one under hand? Or in hand? If so, then I'll entertain a motion.
Bill was gonna do it.
I try a motion to approve, but I'm confused with what we're doing.
Do you have it? I think,
All we're saying is that in our verbiage, we were talking about once Custer is paved, then there will be an opening onto Custer required. And I use contingent dedication, only because that's, it shows on the face, of the plat that there is a dedication. That way the fire department can see that there is gonna be a second exit in and out of this property, once it is paved.
And this has to be coded, so I'm thinking that all of that will be taking place at that jurisdiction, and we don't have to deal with that, but whatever everybody wants to do as far as
Well,
trying to
the
design
issue here is the fact that we're putting on the face of the plat complete access control on Custody.
Right.
But we're adding language that is applicable only so long as Custody is unimproved or unpaved.
And since it,
And then the proviso will be, once paved, Custody shall have one entrance somewhere.
and the agents agreed to it, so
Yes.
I'll
Yep.
put that in my motion.
Second.
okay. So it was moved by Mr. Johnson. Who had the second? The other Johnson.
Brother Johnson.
Johnson and Johnson again. So, Mr. Yearout, you're clear on the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Neil, I think you understand that.
We're gonna say it's along the frontage of Custody, we will have access control except one opening that is required, subject to the paving of Custody.
Okay. Everybody good?
Yes.
Everybody got that? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
You bet, thank you. Moving on to the non-public items. We have our first item, Mr. Banks.
Yes, Stephen Banks, Advanced Plans Division. This is regarding the urban areas of influence. In October of 2015, the County Commission voted to have the what they called then the urban areas of influence coincide with the urban growth areas that are a part of the joint city-county comprehensive plan. Before that, it had been zoning areas of influence, and they chose the term urban areas of influence to take that. The urban areas of influence are a regulatory gift from the County Commission to small cities that allows them to review and give comment on development activity within these areas surrounding their cities. And the reason for that is because Sedgwick County has county-wide zoning. Not all counties have that, but this gives those communities a chance to participate in applications close to their community. In January of 2016, the Community Investments Plan was adopted and included the 2035 urban growth areas to portray the anticipated growth of the cities within Sedgwick County. This is to serve as a reasonable indication as to where development activity may occur around those areas out to the year 2035. And every 2 years, we have gone to the cities to check with them, 19 communities, about their annexation and development activity and see if there were any reasons to adjust those boundaries. In 2017, we did make a minor amendment to the urban growth areas or urban areas of influence, which gives us the current map. The map before you actually shows those areas in the solid colors. In October of 2019, the MAPD was asked by members of the County Commission to look at expanding the urban areas of influence for each of the small cities. And we sent out a letter to them with the definition of what the small city urban growth areas were. We asked them to review their growth patterns and building permits, recent subdivision activity, comprehensive plans, and the ability to provide a full range of municipal services by 2035, backed by engineering reports if necessary. And this really involved more infrastructure, water, sewer, streets, that kind of thing, than any other evidence that they had. By January of 2020, 10 cities expressed interest in extending their urban areas of influence. Later, one of those 10 cities requested to postpone submitting their changes until 2021. That was Keachai, and they had a change of administration there and wanted to kind of relook at this again. Again, map 1 shows the existing 2017 urban areas of influence as the solid colors. The hatched areas are what is being requested for expansion. The cities with expansion areas are Hayesville, Cheney, Derby, Mulvane, and Valley Center. All of these are pretty straightforward. They have been updating their comprehensive plans and so forth to coincide with these changes. Derby is a very small area on the south side of 95th Street next to K15, and if you see Mulvane's little hatched area, you'll see a very tiny hatched area in kind of a more gold color. That line is drawn in order to agree with their comprehensive plan and the joint plan between Derby and Mulvane, where that line was drawn back then for their joint area plan. There were 2 other cities that had some issues, Mount Hope and Andale in northwest Sedgwick County. Mount Hope is happy with their urban growth area, but they were seeking to have all of Greeley Township as an area of influence. Andale wanted to expand some of their growth area as a result of landowner and developer interests. They do have capacity and plans to service those areas, but they also wanted to expand an urban area of influence larger to all of Sherman Township. The Advanced Plans Committee rejected the township-wide idea for these two communities as being too much that did not or was not related to expected growth and the provision or capacity to provide infrastructure to those areas. Therefore, Mount Hope's area of influence or urban growth area would not change as seen in this map here, but Andale's would change to the areas to the northwest and south that are depicted here. There were two communities that had proposals that had conflicts. They were Garden Plain and Goddard. Garden Plain is seeking to expand its urban area of influence to the east, south, and west. This is a result of wanting to extend water and gas utilities to several of these outlying areas, both landowner and developer interest, and then also residents outside the city asking for city streets, police, and other municipal services. Goddard also was wanting to expand their area. They originally wanted to go into an area between 183rd to 167th Street, which is in the city of Wichita's growth area. They did concede not to do that because both the city and the county wanted to preserve that area in order to do a major flood control project. And most of that area would become floodplain in that project. So they did concede to that. However, if you'll see on the map, there are 2 square miles that have both blue and gold crosshatch. One of those is just north of US 54. The other one is 2 miles south. So, and that is between 247th Street West and 263rd Street West. There has been no agreement between the two communities at this point. On September 10th, the Advanced Plans Committee recommended to approve changes to the other cities' urban areas of influence except Goddard and Garden Plain at this time, as shown on map 2. If you'll go ahead and advance to the next slide. Goddard and Garden Plain's 2017 boundaries would stay in place, plus the MAPD would ask Goddard and Garden Plain to submit formal requests next year to change their urban areas of influence once agreements have been reached and updates to the comprehensive plans have been completed. Secondly, they recommended the MAPC set a public hearing date of October 22nd at their September 24th meeting. In your packet, we did have an additional page on some alternative ideas, concepts. If you'll flip to map 3, Jim. The lines drawn on this map would be a compromise that could be proposed or offered as a first try to get an agreement between the communities. It is based upon state statute for counties that do not have county-wide zoning, which states that a municipality can have zoning influence up to 3 miles outside of their city limits, but not more than halfway distant between any neighboring community. So the dotted line on here is the 3-mile limit. The solid line is about 2 miles, which kind of gets you to that middle ground between the two communities. It could be a starting point. for going forward. While we are doing this, this would be an amendment to the comprehensive plan. If you'll turn to the next slide, Jim. This map is the current map in the comprehensive plan. There are other updates that need to be done to this. The first one being at the top. Currently it says this map does not reflect the zoning areas of influence. Well, of course not, they don't exist anymore. But we do need it to say that they do reflect the urban areas of influence for Sedgwick County. Along with that, under small city urban growth areas, we have added a sentence at the end there saying these areas coincide with the urban areas of influence. The sentence before that, because we didn't want to upset the whole formatting of this map, used the word municipalities repetitively, and so we took some of that out to say population growth rather than municipal population growth and things of that sort in order to get things to continue to fit. Under the established central area, we are inserting the Wichita Places for People plan. We had other language in there referring to a plan that would yet be adopted, but Places for People has been adopted, so we are changing that language. The next thing is under industrial improvement districts, Sedgwick County Park and McConnell Air Force Base. We changed the language because McConnell Air Force Base isn't really a district, but there is agreement as that this is an area that the city would not annex into, and they wouldn't annex into our incorporated area. So we're changing that to be explicitly mentioning that, and we are updating the green areas on the map that show those improvement districts because they have changed since this map was created. Also, this motion or this action will constitute a zoning code update, as the UAI is actually a part of the zoning code, and that's done for notification purposes. So you will actually be taking two actions when you do take this up in the public hearing. At this time, our recommendation, or actually the Advanced Plans Committee recommends that the MAPC set a public hearing date of October 22nd. The cities will be informed of that public hearing and given an opportunity to present their cases at that time. And we show in your memo the proposed or possible scenario for going forward to the Board of County Commissioners and the City Council afterward. Any questions?
Questions for staff? Mr. McKay?
Do we discuss this now, or we just set the date?
We're just setting the date.
Okay, thank you.
Unless you have some
I've got a lot to say,
questions.
that's why I said, let's wait.
We have been warned.
You'll be running that meeting that day. Just kidding.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions? How about anybody online that have questions? Cindy? Nope, seeing none. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the date as presented by.
I'll make a motion.
Too late, you're second.
You're gonna get the second. Mr. Warren made the motion to set the public hearing date for October 22nd. Ms. Miles seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, this is Josh.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing no nays, motion carries unanimously. Next item, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon, Matt Williams, Associate Planner. The city is currently considering the adoption of a project plan for the Riverside infrastructure project within the Riverside Housing Redevelopment District. So we have Mark Elder here today to discuss the project, and then I'll be back to go over the consistency with the comprehensive plan.
Good afternoon, Commission. Mark Elder with the City's Office of Economic Development. The item for you today, as Matt had said, is the consideration for whether the project plan for the Riverside Infrastructure Project is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And so the district was established earlier this year. It's the Riverside Housing District, and it in 2019 it was established, or it was considered redevelopment. It was an old, I think, like children's home that but had ended up being vacant, and the land was badly dilapidated. And so some developers bought that, demolished the land, and then are now planning a new development that would be approximately 40 homes within that area. The boundaries are Amidon to McLean east to west, as well as extending south along the river from 13th Street down to West Central Avenue. This map generally depicts the area. The development of the housing is kind of that triangle that sticks out on the north side there, and then the rest of the district includes the river in order to use TIF financing to fund the pathway, including like the river bike path, lighting, other safety features along the river. But by expanding the boundary, it allows us to do that. And then the development will occur mostly on the north there where the housing will be. Again, the overall district is approximately 90 acres, with about 7 acres being where the housing development is, and the remainder being along the river to include that. This is one where the district and the project area are the same size. Occasionally TIF districts will have multiple project areas. For this one, it's one single project area for the entire TIF district. I already spoke to approximately 40 homes, and the TIF will be used for both infrastructure that supports the development, as well as those riverbank and river path improvements. There's also a trailhead plan for the north side of the path there, close to 13th, mostly just north of where that development is. This is a site plan here of that area that is the proposed housing development. The north area there that has the drive, and you can see just north of that some open land, that is where that trailhead is proposed to occur. And then I just have a couple renderings of what are being proposed in the area as far as the housing that would be developed there. And that's all for my presentation. I can stand for any questions, and I can also have Matt stand up to do his portion as far as the consistency with the comprehensive plan.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Mr. McKay.
You're talking about the TIF, and the TIF does that mean that the 7 acres that's in this TIF, that's in this designated area, is the only one that would be affected by the tax benefits of the TIF?
That is the only area that would be paying property taxes, correct.
Thank you.
I've got a question.
Mr. Hartman?
On this site plan here, why are there double red lines there on kind of the north?
I believe, is that the comprehensive plan overlay, Matt? I think it's that one.
That one there.
That one, that's it.
The double red line, is that what you're asking? Mm-hmm. That happens to be, it's actually 2 parcels. When the developers purchased that land, they actually kind of did a land swap with the city to make their land more contiguous and then provide the north end there where that trailhead is. So I believe that map is just depicting that there's 2 parcels there that would be redeveloped as part of the project.
So.
Yes, Mr. Dewell?
Pardon?
Do you have a question?
Yeah, is the city working with the developers on this, or is this a concept the city came up with?
No, this is a proposal by the development team that is doing this project.
Okay, no further questions? Thank you. Matt?
So it's the opinion of staff that the Riverside infrastructure project within the Riverside Housing Redevelopment District is substantially consistent with the Wichita-Sedgwick County Comprehensive Plan. The 2035 Wichita Future Growth Concept Map, which you can see in front of you, indicates the land use of the project area is predominantly residential, with parks and open space along the river and riverfront. Residential land use encompasses the full diversity of residential development, and parks and open space includes both public and private open space. It's important to note that this comprehensive land use map is general and doesn't necessarily prescribe what can be there in the future. The entire development site for the Riverside Infrastructure Project is zoned B multifamily. The project is also within the established central area that's comprised of the downtown core and mature neighborhoods surrounding it. In this area, the Wichita urban infill strategy is emphasized and encourages appropriate infill development. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission pass a resolution finding the proposed Riverside infrastructure project within the Riverside Housing Redevelopment District to be substantially consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Foster?
Matt, in the legal descriptions, it references west of the AVI right-of-way. What is AVI?
That was provided to me by Mark. I'm not sure if he'd be able to answer that.
It's an old railroad right-of-way that started down south and went, I think it's the same right-of-way that went through, or went by the old, what's now the Drury, but the old Broadview Hotel. And yeah, it's just a railroad, and it goes north. Well, Mr. McKay probably used that railroad back in the day. He might be able to speak more.
I probably used it before it was even a railroad.
To expand.
But yeah, so it's an old railroad right away, but it's still in legal descriptions.
So just like that, you don't have to spell it out or anything in a legal description.
Yes,
You just use it
that's
like
normal.
that.
That's
Okay,
normal.
great, thank you.
Yep, yep. Yes, Mr. McKay.
I'm gonna go back to because you're doing the river, the Arkansas River, and it goes to more than one state, the Corps of Engineers is gonna be involved in it, correct?
I would.
If there are actually changes to within where the Corps has an influence, and yes, the Corps would be involved, but many of those improvements will be along like the bike path and lighting, which may or may not be within the purview. But the Corps would be involved if there are changes. There's actually no change to the river, but if there are areas that they have an influence on, then they would be involved in that project.
The follow-up to that question is, does that mean the developer of the triangle piece there is gonna be responsible to participate in whatever the Corps, if they should be involved, would have to come up with? Because they're the only tax-paying entity in this whole project.
I might need you to clarify a little bit on what you mean by like the developer being involved in the discussions with the Corps on the improvements.
Well, is the Corps of Engineers gonna tell these people what they can and cannot do if they see something that's gonna happen downstream from where this project is, because it's all encompassed in one?
If I understand correctly, the improvements along the river would actually be funded and constructed through the city. So it'd be using the TIF dollars to make those improvements, but it'll be managed by the city, and the developer would be responsible for improvements within their project area, which I haven't confirmed, but because of where that location is, may or may not be within the influence of the Corps. As far as along the river, that's going to be the city's project to fund and construct.
Yeah, but they got rules and regulations because it's an interstate waterway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I just don't want to see the developer, because it's encompassed with the balance of the thing that's gonna happen up and down the river, be refunded, because they're the only people that's got any tax dollars.
Well, correct, I understand that their tax dollars are the ones, going to do that, but it's actually still city funds is the way it's going, as far as they pay those taxes directly back to the city to fund those improvements. So there should be no impact on them on how the city spends those funds outside of their development.
So you're saying downstream by Sims Park there, that if something comes up and the Corps of Engineers requires it, the city's gonna take all financial responsibilities. And even though it's a TIF for the whole area, that the developers are not gonna be financially responsible for that to happen.
If there is an impact within their site, their land, then the developer would be held responsible, but I wouldn't see that the developer would be held responsible for a city project. The city would have to make the determination at the time whether they can, pursue that if there's an additional cost because of the Corps of Engineers influence.
I understand why they're putting it all together because they couldn't get anything if they did it with a small area. But I just didn't know if they'd looked into the financial end, because the Corps of Engineers will get involved in this, more than likely.
Right. And yeah, that's a question I guess we can go back and look into, and where that if there are improvements along the river that are influenced by the Corps, we'll have to address that.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I move that we take the recommended action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to take the recommended action. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Josh?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We have one more item here. We've come up with committee appointments for next year. These will be emailed out to you, or I've got a copy of them here, but I'll go ahead and read off the members of the advanced plans. Mr. Bill Johnson, by being the vice chair of the Planning Commission, will be chairing the Advanced Plans Committee. We have Joe Johnson on there, Bob Dool, Chuck Warren. We have the mayor's appointment whenever he makes that. We have Cindy Miles and Rob Hartman. On the subdivision, we have Shane Gross, Josh Blick, Hugh Nix, John McKay, Terrell Florence, David Foster, and myself. These appointments have been made, trying to keep in mind those that did respond back via the email that was sent out earlier this week, trying to keep with the wishes of those that did respond. So that's it. And like I said, I've got hard copies here if you want to take that, or it will be mailed out to you later on today. So with that, if we have any other items, yes, Mr. Warren. And
question on the list you had there, where we talked about alternates on subdivision committee, just to make sure we have a quorum, or was that list have all of those, or?
No, these are just the 7 members that will comprise that committee. If we need to have alternates, Mr. Foster is indicating that he would like to have 2 alternates. I know that,
And I'm happy to serve as an alternate.
yeah, Cindy Miles was one that had indicated to me earlier that she would be willing to be an alternate. And was there somebody else that had approached me on that? Well, but this would be an alternate for a subdivision, so you're on that committee. So, is there anybody else on the Mr. Dool? Sir. Surely not. Okay, so Mr. Yearout, you had one more comment?
I just want to let everyone know that we're working on laying out the schedule for 2021. We've got that tentatively laid out for MAPC meetings through the next year. We will be sharing that with you. We're kind of double checking to make sure we don't have conflicts with holidays and those kind of fun things, but that will be coming out. That's necessary because we also have to lay out subdivision calendar and then everything else that follows with that. So it's coming.
Okay.
We're already on cases that are heard now, may not be heard until the beginning of next year if they go to governing body on some stuff. So we're already dealing with 2021. It's like, wow.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Anything else? If not,